Today you are going to hear one of the most unbelievable stories ever told. His name is Imran Khalid, a man born in northern Jordan, raised in a Muslim family where faith was law and obedience a matter of honor. Respected as a teacher of the Quran, Imran believed he was serving God until the day he received a dangerous mission to prove that the Christian Bible was false. But in trying to destroy the faith of others, he ended up finding the truth himself. And it all began when he accidentally watched a video by Kirk, who spoke about Jesus in a way he had never heard before. From that moment on, the impossible began to happen. Get ready, because this story has persecution, escape, supernatural visions, and an ending that no one could have imagined. And to begin, make sure you are already subscribed, leave a like, and in the comments write the city you are watching from, because what is about to happen will shake your faith.
My name is Imran Khalid, and for much of my life I believed I was serving God. I was raised in northern Jordan, in a village where faith was the foundation of everything. Every home had a prayer rug, every family followed tradition, and from an early age I learned that to question was to dishonor. I grew up hearing the calls to prayer before I even learned to read, and when I became a man, the sound of the adhan at dawn was the rhythm that guided my days. I believed that the more I obeyed, the more I studied the Quran, the closer I would be to pleasing Allah. And for a long time that was enough for me. But obedience can be a prison when it is driven by fear. My day began before the sun rose. I washed my face with cold water, knelt, and recited the sacred verses. The sound echoed through the mountains, and for a moment, I felt peace. But soon after, something inside me began to stir again. It was a strange feeling, a kind of emptiness I could not explain. I did everything right, prayed at the right times, fasted with discipline, taught others about faith. And yet, every night as I lay down, I felt that something was missing. For years I hid that conflict. I was a teacher in a religious school and in everyone's eyes an exemplary man. I spoke with authority, debated with conviction, and defended Islam with passion. When a Christian tried to talk to me, I mocked them. I said they had lost their way, that Jesus was nothing more than a prophet, and that Christianity was simply a distortion of the truth. Inside me, there was pride, the kind of pride born from the fear of being wrong. And that fear guided me more than faith ever did. As time passed, I noticed something strange. The more I studied, the more rigid I became. The religion that once gave me security began to suffocate me. I followed rules, but I did not feel love. I repeated prayers, but I found no peace. I saw my students admiring me, and that fed my vanity. But when the lights went out, I was just a man alone with his questions. Sometimes during the silent nights, I looked at the ceiling and wondered if God truly heard me. It was during that time that I began engaging in debates with Christian scholars. I believed I was defending the truth, but something within me changed after every discussion. They spoke of a God who loved, not only the righteous but also the sinners, a God who forgave even when he was offended. That unsettled me, because to me, God was a strict judge, not a loving father. The idea that he could love even my enemies seemed absurd. I had become a divided man, outwardly an example of faith, inwardly a soul at war. Every time I recited the Quran, my heart felt more distant. I began to notice the people around me, all performing the same rituals, all striving for merit, all afraid. The fear of failing, the fear of hell, the fear of not being enough. And I began to ask myself, if God is love, why do we live terrified of him? Those questions haunted me, but I kept them to myself. To speak of such things would be betrayal. Doubt was a sign of weakness, and weakness was shameful. So I kept smiling, teaching, pretending that my faith was solid as a rock, when in truth it had already begun to crack. Then my superiors called me into a meeting. I remember the moment clearly. 3 men seated at a table, serious faces, sharp eyes. They said I had a new mission. I would be responsible for writing a book that would prove that the Christian Bible had been corrupted, that it was not trustworthy, and that Muhammad was the true promised prophet. It sounded like an honor, a sacred duty. I felt chosen, but at the same time a chill ran down my spine. It was as if something inside me whispered that this project would not end well. Still, I accepted without question. After all, disobedience was unthinkable. And deep down I saw it as a chance to strengthen my faith, to silence whatever doubts remained. I began the work with confidence. I took an old Bible, one that had been left behind by a foreigner at a local market. It smelled of aged paper, the pages yellowed, and it carried a strange weight in my hands. I opened it with the same disdain a soldier opens the map of an enemy. My goal was clear: to find contradictions, errors, flaws. The faster I found them, the easier it would be to prove that my religion was superior. In the first few days, everything seemed simple. I read, took notes, and compared passages to the Quran. But little by little, I began to notice something that unsettled me. The words of Jesus carried a different power. They did not sound like mere instructions, and they felt alive. I read, "Love your enemies, do good to those who persecute you." And for reasons I could not understand, those words hurt me and healed me at the same time. There was something in them I could not find anywhere else. In the Quran, I read about war, duty, and obedience. In the Bible, I found love, forgiveness, grace. It was as if I were reading something written by someone who truly understood the human heart. At first I tried to resist. I told myself, these words have been altered. That's what they say. But the more I read, the harder it was to believe that. The light those sentences carried was different, and I began to feel like a man seeing the sun for the first time after living his whole life inside a cave. I started losing sleep. I spent entire nights reading, comparing, trying to find an error, any error that could confirm my beliefs. But the more I searched, the less I found. I began to see contradictions not in the Bible, but within myself. I said I served God, but I felt hatred. I said I sought truth, but I ran from it whenever it confronted me. Then I read a passage that changed everything. Forgive 70 times 7, 70 times 7. I had never heard anything like that before. A God who commands infinite forgiveness? That shattered all my logic, all my theology, all my pride. For the first time I realized that the God of the Bible did not just want to be obeyed. He wanted relationship. He did not demand war. He demanded love. The days became a whirlwind. I went to prayers, but my mind was somewhere else. The words of Jesus haunted me, echoing in my mind even as I slept. My superiors began to grow suspicious of how long I was taking to finish the project. One of them called me in and said firmly, "If you do not find enough errors, invent them." At that moment, something inside me broke. For the first time in my life, I remained silent before an order. I, who had always obeyed without hesitation, could not respond. My heart began to race as if an invisible battle were taking place inside me. I could not lie about what I was seeing. And what I was seeing was the truth. Clear, deep, and undeniable. That night, when everyone was asleep, I stayed awake. The room was dark, and the sound of the wind hitting the window seemed to call to me. I knelt down. But this time I did not repeat the words I had always said. I simply took a deep breath and spoke to whoever might be listening. If you are real, show me who you are. I no longer want to live on inheritance or fear. I just want the truth. And there, for the first time, I did not speak to the usual God, the God I had been told to fear. I spoke to the God I hoped to find, a God who might exist beyond the borders of religion, beyond the walls of tradition, beyond memorized words. In that instant, something changed within me. I could not explain it, but I felt as though someone had heard me, and though the silence remained, I knew that somehow that prayer would not be lost in the void. What I could not imagine was that this quiet search would take me down paths that would change everything I believed, and that the answer to my cry would come in a way I could never have predicted. That week, I barely slept. My mind was torn between loyalty to everything I had always believed and the strange pull I felt toward the words of Jesus. I kept trying to convince myself it was just confusion, just exhaustion. But the more I tried to run from it, the more something drew me back. It was as if an invisible force were guiding me toward something I could not yet understand. One of those early mornings, while searching for new arguments to continue my book, I opened my computer browser and began looking for debates between Muslims and Christians. I wanted intellectual ammunition. I wanted to find someone who could prove what I needed to believe. That was when, among the recommended videos, A young American man's face appeared. Charlie Kirk. The title said something like, "Is the Christian faith logical?" And, I confess, I clicked out of curiosity. Part of me wanted to laugh, to mock his words, but another part wanted to understand. The first thing that surprised me was his tone. He did not shout. He did not try to impose anything. He spoke with confidence, but with a calm that disarmed me. There was truth in his voice. Not an arrogant truth, but a quiet, steady conviction. Charlie said that Jesus was not just a prophet or a moral teacher, but God himself who became man to reconcile us with the Father. I had never heard anyone speak like that. He quoted Bible passages, told stories, and answered difficult questions with patience. And the most striking thing, he spoke of relationship with God, not of fear or punishment. I remember sitting frozen in front of the screen, as if my beliefs had been suspended for a moment. When the video ended, I felt a tightness in my chest and a burning curiosity inside me. I clicked on another video, and another. I spent hours there, immersed in something that both confused and attracted me like a magnet. Over the next few days, I kept watching, sometimes on my phone in secret so no one would see. In each video, I realized that Christianity was not what I had been taught. Charlie spoke of a God who wanted to be known, who cared, who forgave. A God who was not satisfied with rituals but desired the heart. That was completely different from the God I had feared. And the more I listened, the more a strange thought grew inside me. What if he was right? That week, I could not work. The book I was supposed to write lay forgotten on the table. Every time I tried to continue my research, an inner voice whispered, "Stop looking for errors and start looking for truth." I tried to ignore it. I tried to convince myself I was losing my mind. But Charlie's words echoed like thunder within me. Truth is not afraid of being questioned. On a Friday night, I sat again in front of the computer. The house was quiet. The wind hit the windows, and the streetlights flickered on the wall. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, and decided to watch one more video before going to sleep. Charlie was telling the testimony of a former atheist who found Jesus in the midst of pain. He said, "There is no argument stronger than a transformed heart." Those words struck me like an arrow. I paused the video, closed the laptop, and sat there staring into the darkness. Then everything came pouring out. The doubts, the fear, the pride, the guilt, the weight of years spent trying to prove I was right. I cried, not with tears of remorse, but with tears of freedom. For the first time, I cried speaking to God. Not the God I feared, but the God I longed to know. "Lord, if you are real," I said with a trembling voice, "do not leave me in the dark any longer. I do not want to win debates. I do not want to be right. I just want to know you." After that, I do not remember exactly when I fell asleep, but I know that what happened that night changed everything. While I slept, I had a vision. It was more real than any dream I had ever had. I was in a completely white place. There were no walls, no ceiling, only light. And in the middle of that light, there was someone. A man dressed in white, with eyes that cannot be described. They did not just shine, they seemed to see through everything, even the darkest corners of my soul. He walked toward me, and with each step, the ground beneath my feet seemed to tremble. When he spoke, his voice sounded like the wind and, at the same time, like a song. He said only, "I am the one you have been seeking." My whole body trembled. I wanted to speak, but I could barely breathe. Finally, with the little strength left in my voice, I asked, "Who are you?" He looked at me, and that gaze seemed to hold centuries of love, mercy, and truth. And then he answered, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." At that moment, something inside me broke, not in pain, but in freedom. It was as if every chain of fear, pride, and doubt had been shattered all at once. I felt warmth flood through my body, a peace so intense it felt impossible to bear. The tears came again, but now they were different, not of despair, but of surrender. The vision slowly faded, like a breeze withdrawing, and I woke up gasping, my heart racing. The room was dark, but there was an unexplainable sense of light within it. I sat on the bed in silence, trying to understand what had just happened. For the first time in my entire life, I did not feel fear. I felt peace, a deep peace, as if I had finally come home after years of being lost in the desert. The next morning, the sunlight entered through the window with a different softness. Everything seemed new, the air, the colors, even the sound of the birds. I got up, still dazed, and looked for the Bible I had used for research. It was not on the table. I searched through papers, opened drawers, looked under the bed, but nothing. It was as if the book had simply disappeared. While I searched, I heard something, not with my ears but within my heart. A gentle, steady, familiar voice. Open the closet. I stood still for a few seconds. I thought I was imagining things, but the urge was strong. I walked to the closet, opened the doors, and there it was. The Bible, untouched, in the same place where I swore it had not been. My whole body shook. I picked up the book carefully, as if touching something sacred. I sat down and opened it at random, not knowing what I was looking for. The pages turned on their own until they stopped at the Gospel of John, chapter 14, verse 6. My eyes went straight to the words that seemed to shine before me. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. The very same words I had heard in the vision. I could not hold back the tears. Those sentences were not just text. They were life. It was as if God were telling me, "You heard me. Now follow me." I fell to my knees. I felt the cold floor against my skin, and with it came a feeling of total surrender. I knew, with an unexplainable certainty, that Jesus was real, that he was who he said he was, that he loved me, despite everything. I stayed there, crying, speechless. The only thing I managed to say was, "Forgive me. Forgive me for all the hatred I had carried, for every word of contempt, for every time I had denied his name." And as I spoke, something extraordinary happened. A weight I had carried for as long as I could remember simply vanished. It was as if someone had lifted tons off my back. I do not know how long I stayed on my knees. The sun rose higher in the sky, and the light filled the room, illuminating every corner. For the first time, I looked at that light and did not feel fear. I felt a love so real, so powerful that it could not be contained within me. That was when I realized my search had ended, that the God I had feared so deeply was not distant, but right there, within me, calling me by name. I did not know what would come next, nor what would happen if I told the truth. I only knew that in that moment something new had begun, and nothing, absolutely nothing, could ever erase what I had experienced that morning. When I woke up that morning after everything I had lived through, the sunlight seemed different. I did not know if it was the brightness from the window or something inside me that had finally been lit. For a moment, peace surrounded me so deeply that I almost believed the whole world had changed with me. I walked through the house with lightness. Each breath felt like a new beginning. But I was about to discover that when the light of Christ enters someone's life, the darkness does not remain silent. In the days that followed, I began to speak, cautiously, about what had happened to me. First, to a fellow scholar, someone I trusted, I told him that I had been reading the Bible and had found something that had unsettled me, something different, something I could no longer deny. At first, he just gave a strange smile, as if it were a joke, but when I mentioned the name of Jesus with reverence, the smile disappeared. He looked at me with anger and said, "Do not say that again, Imran. You are crossing a dangerous line." That sentence sounded like both a warning and a sentence. Within a few weeks, everyone began to notice that something had changed in me. I no longer attended the meetings as before. I did not speak with the same fervor about the Quran, and there was a serenity in my eyes that unsettled people. The rumor spread quickly. First whispers, then direct confrontations. One of my former mentors, a man I owed deep respect to, came to see me in person. I remember the sound of the door slamming as he entered my house. "Imran, what is this I am hearing about you?" I tried to explain, still cautiously, that I had found something in the Bible that had deeply moved me. He interrupted me before I could even finish the sentence. "Moved you?" he repeated with irony. "So that is it? You are letting yourself be deceived by the books of the infidels? You, who were chosen to defend the faith, now speak like one of them?" I tried to respond, But he continued, his voice growing firmer. You are a traitor. If you continue down this path, I will have no choice but to report you. You know what that means. Those words froze my blood. I knew. In that environment, changing faith was more than a personal choice. It was an offense, a moral crime, a social death sentence, and for some, a literal one. In the days that followed, isolation became my new companion. Childhood friends began to avoid me. Some crossed the street when they saw me. Others sent short messages filled with contempt. One of them wrote, "You have stained your family's name." I deleted the message, but the words stayed carved inside me. My mother was the last to find out. And perhaps that was the hardest part. When she entered my room, wearing a white scarf on her head and with tears in her eyes, I knew the moment had come. "Imran, what have they done to you?" she asked, her voice trembling. I took a deep breath and calmly said, "Mother, no one has done anything. I have found the truth." She looked at me, confused, almost breathless. "What truth?" "The truth that is in Jesus." It was as if the world had stopped. She stepped back once, then again, as if she had been struck. "Do not say that name here." Her voice broke. "Please, my son, return to Allah. He will forgive you if you have not gone too far yet." But I could no longer go back. I had already known the light, and after seeing the light, it is impossible to love the darkness. From that day on, she began to cry every time she saw me. Sometimes silently, sometimes begging. She said that I was lost, that I had been deceived, that she would rather see me dead than living this way. Those words hurt me more than any threat. I locked myself in my room and prayed. I prayed for her, for my friends, for myself. I prayed with tears and hope, holding the same Bible I once wanted to destroy. The threats came soon after. One of the community leaders appeared at my door with a cold stare. "You are shaming all of us," he said. "Stop talking about that man. If you continue, you will regret it." I tried to explain that I was not attacking anyone, that I only wanted to follow what I had discovered. But he would not listen. "This is betrayal," he said before leaving, slamming the door so hard that the frame shook. That night was one of the longest of my life. I lay in the dark, listening to the distant sound of empty streets. Every noise made me flinch. I knew I had crossed a point of no return. Fear tried to settle in, but at the same time there was a voice within me saying, "Do not be afraid. I am with you." It was a paradox. The whole world seemed against me, yet for the first time, I felt I was not alone. I lost everything in a short time. I was expelled from the school where I taught. My neighbors stopped greeting me. My family cut me off. Even my mother, with a broken heart, asked me to leave home so I would not bring shame. I left with a small suitcase and a Bible in my hands. I had nowhere to go. I walked through streets that had once been familiar and suddenly felt hostile. The looks, the closed doors, the whispers, everything screamed that I no longer belonged there. But strangely enough, inside me there was a peace I had never known. It was as if Jesus were saying to me, I too was rejected. I found shelter in a small boarding house on the outskirts of the city. It was a simple room, with a narrow bed and cracked walls. I slept with the Bible on my chest and woke up each day thanking God for being alive. Each morning was a miracle, each breath, a gift. And the more I read the Word, the more I understood that following the truth has a price. But the love of God is worth any sacrifice. I lived like that for months, hiding, sustained only by small jobs and by faith. There were nights when I thought about giving up. The loneliness was heavy, the fear constant. But every time I closed my eyes and remembered the gaze of that man in white, my strength returned. I knew that the same God who brought me out of darkness would not let me fall into despair. Years later, when I finally obtained a visa to leave the country, I cried as the plane took off. I looked out the window and saw the city fading away, the golden deserts left behind. It felt as though I was leaving not only a place, but an entire life. I arrived in the United States with nothing. No friends, no guarantees, no idea what my future would be. But I had the Bible, and that was enough. I started over. I worked small jobs, learned the language, and met people who welcomed me like family. It was strange. Those same people I had once despised were now treating me with love. And it was there, in that new country, that my faith began to blossom. I started sharing my story with small groups in local churches. At first, my voice trembled. I still carried the marks of fear. But every time I spoke, I felt something only those who have been transformed can understand. The Spirit giving me courage to go on. Some people cried. Others came to hug me after the meetings, saying they had prayed for years for someone like me. And little by little, I realized that God had not only rescued me, He was using me. But one day, years after rebuilding my life, the phone rang. It was a call from my country. The voice on the other end was trembling. My mother was very ill. The news struck me like lightning. My heart raced. Part of me wanted to run to see her. Another part knew the risk. Returning meant exposing myself, facing again those who had sworn to silence me. But there was something stronger than fear, love. With tears in my eyes, I began to prepare for the trip. I knew it might be the last time I would see her. During the flight, I stayed silent, looking at the clouds outside, remembering the prayers I had made for her through all those years. I asked God to give me one chance, just one, to show her the love that had transformed me. When I arrived in Jordan, the air felt heavier, as if the past were waiting for me with folded arms. I entered the house where I had grown up and found my mother lying down, pale, weak, yet still with that steady gaze. She looked at me in silence for a few seconds and with a fading voice asked, "Do you still serve that Jesus?" For a moment, time stopped. I took a deep breath and answered gently, "Yes, Mother, and that is why I came back." She closed her eyes and began to cry. I sat by her bed, held her hand, and began to pray softly. The words came out with difficulty, between sobs and sighs. I did not ask for miracles, only that the love of Christ would touch her. And in that moment, something happened. She slowly turned her face toward me and said, almost in a whisper, "If He changed you like this, then He is real." Those words echoed inside me like a heavenly song. I did not know whether to laugh or cry. I just held her hand and stayed there, feeling the presence of God fill the room. A few days later, she passed away in peace. But before she left, she opened her eyes one last time and whispered, "God is with you, my son." That was, without a doubt, the greatest victory of my life. Not a victory made of applause or achievements, but the victory of faith. The salvation of the woman who gave me life. I returned to the United States with my heart in pieces, but my soul on fire. The pain of loss mixed with gratitude. I knew that even in silence, my mother had been touched by the same love that set me free. And it was at that point I understood, God does not just change a story. He writes chapters no man could ever imagine. The battle was not over yet, but for the first time, I was ready for what was to come, because after losing everything, I had gained what mattered most, the certainty that truth, when lived with love, can transform even the hardest hearts.
And so ends the story of Imran Khalid, a man who believed he was fighting for the truth, but who ended up finding the very author of it. A man who lost everything, friends, family, security, and yet discovered something infinitely greater, the peace that only exists when Jesus enters the heart. His journey reminds us that God can use any path, even a computer screen, to reach a heart hungry for truth. And perhaps this is what the Holy Spirit wants to remind you of today. No matter where you are, how far you feel, or how much time has passed, Jesus is still calling you by name. If this story touched your soul, take this moment to subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and write in the comments, "I love Jesus." That way you help this message of hope reach even more people who need to hear that there is salvation, healing, and forgiveness. And get ready, because the next video now appearing on your screen will deeply move you. It is the real testimony of a woman who was sold as a slave for leaving Islam, and how Jesus set her free after 3 years in captivity. A story of pain, faith, and redemption that will once again prove to you that the love of God knows no boundaries. Click and watch now, and prepare your heart, because what comes next is simply life-changing.